So Channel 7 actually sent a reporter to Riverside, and he's standing there.
Because it's going to be hot?
Well, there was a little graphic that said 100 degrees.
Oh, now?
I think
what
it's
about
100
tomorrow?
degrees now, yeah.
I know.
So he's standing there, and he's telling the audience that you should run your air conditioning.
Hydrate.
Well, duh.
Exercise early.
Thanks. Oh, God, I'm so glad we had Channel 7 on. I just turned it on in time, and the guy's telling us, turn on your air conditioning. Woo-hoo! Wow, I could have died otherwise. What's wrong with these TV people? Why do they do this? You know, the experts say that the safest thing is to turn on your air conditioning.
It's the default story they have to cover.
No, you don't have to cover it. Look at all the stories we cover that they never cover on TV, right? People are so ignorant because television spends its time telling you you're hot and you ought to be running your air conditioner. God, I don't know why that stuff makes me crazy, but it makes me crazy.
All right. Johnny Kent Show here on KFI. We're about to talk to Michele Hanisee, president of the Association of Deputy District Attorneys, and we've had her on quite a bit over efforts to get on a ballot initiative that would put some damage to Props 4757 and that prisoner release policy. But we're bringing her on for another reason. We just got wind. It didn't get a lot of media coverage.
They got no. Oh, there's an example, right? They're busy telling us we have to turn on our air conditioning. Why wasn't the lead story now that every criminal, even if you commit murder, can be released if they can claim they've got some kind of mental disorder? That should be covered, right?
Other than the San Diego Union Tribune editorial, and again, a release by the Association of Deputy District Attorneys, we wouldn't know much about a bill called AB 1810. And it was slipped into the big budget bill nonsense that they passed a week or so ago. And as Michele writes here, the purpose of trailer bills is supposed to be to implement provisions in the budget bill, not to write new policy. And as L.A. Times columnist George Skelton explained, trailer bills are created in the dark without much legislative or public scrutiny and mostly used now by Democrats for slipping through touchy new policy.
Touchy?
Well, this is more than touchy.
This is dangerous. This is going to have to be rolled back with some kind of proposition. Let's get Michele Hanisee on to explain this. And pay close attention here. Michele, how are you?
I'm great. How are you guys?
We're great. Oh, by the way, turn on your air conditioning when you get home, okay?
I will. And by the way, you're going to know shortly that you are mentally ill.
Well, I'm going to go out and commit any crime I want because I'm going to be able to get off now. Will you explain to the people what this is about?
Yeah, in a very shady piece of work, our legislators snuck some major justice system changes into what's supposed to basically be a budget bill. And this isn't totally out of the blue because there was a Senate bill called 215 that had very similar provisions, but 215 had all kinds of checks and balances and limitations. And they took out all the checks and balances, they took out all the limitations, snuck it into this budget trailer bill, and now it got signed into law that a judge, without the consent of the prosecution, can grant restitution to anyone for any crime, including murder, rape, child molestation, anything.
So a murderer, a rapist, a child molester can claim to have a mental disorder and could get a diversion program instead of a trial, and then the charges can be dismissed if the judge thinks the disorder played an important part in the crime?
Yes.
It's Judge, and as it says
and
here,
they really can kill a person and then claim a mental disorder, and a judge can let the guy go.
That is correct. And seal their record. Don't forget. Let them go and also seal their record. And they can do it without the consent of the prosecution. The defense gets to run this whole program. They get to bring in an expert and submit an expert report. The prosecution doesn't get to submit a report. We don't get to find out what the defendant said. We don't get to cross-examine the defense health expert. We're spectators.
So they go into some kind of mental health program. They come out, and some mental health psychiatrist says, "Oh, the guy's fine. He's not going to kill anyone else." And then that's it. The guy gets off, and his record's sealed, and he got away with it.
Absolutely. And pick yourself up a copy of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Illnesses to find out what qualifies as a mental illness. It can include And I kid you not. And some of them are obviously mental illnesses, and some are going to be like, well, apparently I am mentally ill. Pyromania. A pyromaniac, arsonist. An arsonist could start a forest fire, kill 5 firefighters, and pyromania is a legit mental disorder.
Wait. So the crime is a mental disorder in and of itself. Like the crime is proof that you had the mental disorder.
Exactly. Kleptomania. Stealing.
No, this can't be. This is the worst thing I've ever heard of.
Oh, they get worse. There's something called male hypoactive sexual desire disorder, which means you're just a crazy sex fiend.
Well, this could explain rape?
Yeah.
Apparently, if you have that disorder and you rape women or men or anyone because you have this crazy sexual desire disorder, that would be an excuse.
So you know what's going to happen is defense attorneys are going to...
So you just have to get some phony psychiatrist to sign off on the disorder? You go to some, diversion program, and then the charges could be dropped? Is that true?
Yes.
Right. And the thing is, the defense can pay...
And as she said, prosecutors can't challenge this.
The defense can pay off some dirty psychologist to give the diagnosis and give the clearance, and because the prosecution can't challenge it, done deal.
If we were in a trial, we would get to cross-examine them. We would get all their notes. We would get to know what the defendant said to them or what they said in some tests. We'd be able to look for things like malingering, which is a known thing where people fake mental illnesses to get out of trouble.
Well, we'd be relying completely then on the judge to make sure that somebody really dangerous doesn't get their case dropped?
Yes.
Well, wait a second. Isn't every defense attorney going to use this?
Why wouldn't they?
On every crime?
Why
wouldn't you use this on every crime? And you would no longer have any trials.
Exactly. And in the meantime, in the 2 years they're on diversion, the evidence starts disappearing because passage of time is never helpful to the prosecution. It's helpful to the defense.
Oh, my God.
So this is good for any crime?
Any crime.
Wow.
Crime.
Wait.
Child molestation. Child molestation.
Wait a second. If a guy, a serial killer takes out 8 women, same thing?
Well, the only mental illnesses that are included is borderline personality disorder, which wraps up psychopathy, and pedophilia. But there are plenty of other diagnoses you can throw in there. And the DSM includes things like alcohol intoxication, drug intoxication, caffeine intoxication, and withdrawal. Caffeine withdrawal is a mental illness.
Really?
I've had that.
You have, yeah. Remember you stopped drinking Coca-Cola.
Yeah, that was terrible. Well, Michelle, I don't even understand how this is possible. Who wrote this? Who wrote this particular provision here?
That's why they sneak it into a trailer bill, because as it goes through the regular bill process, it's out in public. Everyone gets to see the text. It gets debated publicly, and this is a way to avoid all that nastiness of having people actually criticize the way you wrote the law.
This is horrible. This is horrible. Conceivably, no one will ever get convicted of anything anymore.
And there's also no provision for victim restitution.
Oh my God, this has got to be reversed. I mean, we've got to get a proposition to reverse this thing as quickly as possible. Isn't
this just another attempt to keep the prison population down, as it sounds like?
Well, it would bring it to zero.
It's just astounding, and the lack of responsibility and the way it puts the public at risk. And the judge is even limited in what the judge can consider, because it has to say that after this program, the court satisfied the defendant won't pose an unreasonable risk of danger to public safety pursuant to another code section. But if you read the other code section, it's only an unreasonable risk that the person will commit a new violent felony off that very limited violent felony list. So if it's the risk they're going to go home and pummel their old grandma with their fist, that's not a risk. If the risk is they're going to go stab a police officer in the chest with a knife, that's not an unreasonable risk.
The real move here is to eliminate crimes. Like there just wouldn't be crimes committed anymore, because they ultimately would all be excused and erased.
Right.
It's to eliminate punishment. We're going to have plenty of crime.
No, I understand that, but officially, it's as if there weren't crimes.
Well, it's part of the new de-incarceration.
Oh my God! This has got to be stopped. I mean, the DAs have to be crazy over this.
They're, I think, still in shock.
Well, everybody's got to get out of shock and get this thing reversed.
All right, well, Michelle, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll have you back on as the battle begins. By the way, how's it going with qualifying the proposition dealing with Props 4757 and the prisoner release?
We got to talk about that next week, and I'll give you the short 2-second version.
Okay.
Enough signatures were submitted to qualify, but the county registrars of 13 counties didn't turn in their counts on time.
So it's dead for now?
It looks like it may be. It is most likely.
Because they didn't turn it in on time? Why? Because they wanted to stop this thing?
Well, that's the burning question.
Well, you know
we'll
what?
We'll talk about it next week, Michelle, and we appreciate you coming on.
Oh, my God.
She's the president of the Association of Deputy District Attorneys, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we come back. But this
is horrible. This is horrible.
But remember, John, we're exaggerating the crime is up,
No.
Can't possibly be related to Prop 4757 prisoner release policies and now this thing.
This is the worst
thing.
This
AB 1810.
This is the worst thing ever, and they know what they're doing, and they're doing it on purpose. And what a horrific group of people in the legislature. Jerry Brown is a horrific person. I don't know how anybody could vote for any incumbent in the legislature.
I got to find out.
They're pulling.
When we come back, I got to find out what they call this.
Channel 7, keep running those stories on how it's 100 degrees and you ought to turn on your air conditioning. That's much more important than telling people about this. God almighty. John and Ken, KFI, Deborah Marquez News.